I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday and it's time for The Fix. First up, Higher Education Minister Dr. Nzimande is in the hot seat as students across the country protest at universities. We hear how he plans to cool tempers and get tertiary institutions to work for all students. Then my expert panel takes a look at the upcoming State of the Nation address and unpack what should top President Cyril Ramaphosa's to-do list when he addresses the nation. And as is custom, we take a look at what's made headlines in the weekend newspapers and why. The Fix starts now. Welcome to this edition of The Fix, where every Sunday we hold decision makers to account. We tell you why it matters, how to fix you, and why you should care. The Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, Dr. Nzimande, has condemned violent protests at some universities. He promised an open door and a willingness to engage, but says those engaging in the destruction of facilities should face the full might of the law. But first, before we speak with him, let's hear from UKZN SRC President Sifiso Simelane on what triggered the protest at that university.
We are fighting that struggle, and the elephant in the room now in UKZN is that we have a situation whereby the university is declaring that students must pay registration fee and 15%. Now, if I'm owing 78,000, it means that I must pay the 2,750 and also pay 15% of what I'm owing, of which students find it hard.
Minister Nzimande, thank you so very much for joining us here on The Fix. That was, of course, one of the reasons why students took to protesting. My understanding is that you have met with the student leadership yesterday and the shutdown has effectively now been cancelled. You've also made some agreements. Can you take us through what those agreements are and if they include the fact that the NFSAS contribution that you make will increase as per inflation?
Thank you very much, Karima. Happy New Year, although it's already February, it feels like the year is gone. Thanks for inviting me. First of all, let me just welcome the fact that the student leadership, they've actually called off the shutdown. And I hope that everyone then affected, the students, the parents, university and TVET college communities will now focus on finishing registration smoothly and starting the academic year on time, which usually contributes to how the students are going to do for the rest of the year. We met on Friday afternoon, actually, not for the first time, for the second time with me. Firstly, I had invited them, the student leadership, some 2 weeks ago. Most of the things that we agreed upon were already in what government is providing, and then there were other issues where I think there was some misunderstanding, and of course there were areas also where we said we're willing to consider more some of what the students are saying. For instance, there's going to be no NFSAS student who's going to pay any registration fee upfront. And that money NFSAS has already forwarded to the institutions so that students who are on NFSAS, they don't. And also all NFSAS students who are owing money, they are not going to be required to pay a cent before they register, I will be announcing, I'm sure, further down the year how we are going to be absorbing that debt, or that has been owed by NFSAS students, in the past. And also the issue of accommodation. I mean, you must also understand, Karima, that in fact there are very few countries in the world today, developing world, who are actually providing the kind of support we are doing to higher education students. We pay for tuition, accommodation, we pay for meal allowances, we pay for learning material or book allowances, in short. What has sometimes been a problem, which we have also agreed upon, we're going to communicate to all institutions to stick to this agreement and to stick to this arrangement. For those students who are not NFSAS, we also made an arrangement to say, let's go and focus on engagement with those universities that have been required some upfront payment towards that debt, because some others have just signed acknowledgement of debt and then say, we will see how that money actually gets that is gotten back from the student as time goes on. So that has helped a lot in terms of stabilizing the situation.
Minister, if I understand you correctly, you are saying that no NSFAS student will have to pay registration even if they owe historical debt.
Yes.
And they also won't be paying registration fees.
Exactly.
Now, students often experience agreements with you, but when they get to the actual institutions of learning, they get told something else. How on board are the universities affected? So have you communicated, for example, with the university councils, with the rectors, that this is in fact the decision and this is what is expected to be implemented at universities?
In my meeting with the students, by the way, on Friday, Professor Sibongile Mutua, who is Vice-Chancellor of Nelson Mandela University, was there, representing the universities, together with Professor Ahmed Bauer, and we all committed that firstly within a week we're going to be communicating this understanding to all our institutions, even if some of these things it will act as a reminder. And also they committed that they're going to be engaging with all the university vice-chancellors in particular to make sure that we actually are able to stick to that. And we've said to the students also, don't generalize when there are problems in two institutions. Just come and tell us, in these 2 or 3 institutions there are these problems. So that then all of us, if it's a NSFAS problem, we're going to send the NSFAS staff. If it's a government-wide problem that requires us as a department, I'll send my staff to go and actually attend to that. We have a very good understanding so far with all heads of our post-school institutions.
Let's come to facts and figures. How many students are recipients of your NSFAS scheme, and how exactly is that amount going to be increased, if at all?
Well, Karima, we don't have, of course, the 2020 figures because we are still in the process of registration. But what I can tell you is that with university students, we have already approved more than 400,000. NSFAS beneficiaries, and we are still going to be getting the figures from the TVET colleges, but what I want to tell you is that 95% of the 700,000 or so students at TVET colleges are NSFAS beneficiaries. So in total this year you are looking at more than 700,000 South African students, out of about 2 million university and TVET college students who are going to be receiving NSFAS. In fact, we might just be very close to 50% of the total system. This is something that as a country sometimes we do not appreciate. There is no developing country, as we are talking to you, even some of the developed countries who are providing and rolling out the kind of support that we are. This year alone in rand terms, we're going to be giving out 35 billion rand.
Now, the administration of that is, of course, an enormous task.
Yes.
And that is often where we fall down. Our policies are in place, our agreements are in place, but it's in the rollout. We've seen various horror stories of corruption in the NSFAS system, of students being paid out monies that they're not supposed to be paid out. How confident are you, Minister, that the operationalizing of this massive rollout to students that you say is unprecedented, is corruption-free, and that the system undergirding it is tight enough to make sure that the institutions get the money, that the students get the assistance, and that tertiary institutions can get going on the first day that they open?
Karima, that's a very important question. I am confident, actually, that we will be able to address most of these problems. It does not mean that there are no problems. That is why what we've done this year for the first time ever is that NSFAS students have been approved prior to them registering at universities, to be specific. That has never happened before. So now we know, as student, if you go, you know you have got NSFAS when you go and register. Before that wasn't the case, So that is going to provide huge relief in terms of the problems. Of course, students have rightly so raised that there are some institutions that are not cooperating. Usually,
which institutions are those, Minister?
Well, I wouldn't like to really name names, but there are our system is uneven, Karima, let me tell you that. We still have huge administrative challenges in some of our historically disadvantaged institutions.
I was just going to ask you to be specific in those terms. If you don't want to name institutions, can we say that the bulk of the system problems are with the historically disadvantaged universities?
Yes, and colleges,
but one would assume, Minister, that there is where you must put the most of your capacity. What is it that you're rolling out to ensure that these institutions that have historically been starved of funds, of systems, of proper leadership, have in place the infrastructure to make your policy come alive and to make the lives of students easier?
Well, we've done exactly that. NFSAS staff is on the ground in those institutions that are experiencing most problems. They've been assigned there. On TVET colleges, we have employed people who are actually focusing on boosting the capacity of TVET colleges to be able to handle NFSAS. Because remember, in TVET colleges, NFSAS started around 2010 when our department was established. So we've actually assigned people there as well to actually build capacity so that NFSAS is able to handle these problems. Because indeed, it's a huge rollout. But the most important thing is if we reach an understanding with the students. Because if we reach an understanding with the students, like right now, they call off the shutdown, and I've said to them, let's work together in each institution, and say, as student leaders, you will be on the ground to say, how do we deal with problem A, problem B? If you can't, where do you phone, and so on. I'm convinced now that with that kind of understanding also with the students, we will actually be able to deal with most of the problems that face us.
Now, this is very direct, hands-on engagement with one constituency involved, which is the students, right? The other constituencies, of course, the universities themselves, the institutions. Now, you said Professor Bauer was in that meeting. He's, of course, heading up the Council for Universities. How ready are they, and what assurances have they given you that they will be able to work as a component part of that group of people that needs to make the system work? How geared up are they to do it?
Karima, by the way, even before I answer that, I've met more than just students over the last 2 weeks. I've met with civil society, which included the churches, traditional leaders, I've met with political parties, all of the political parties represented in Parliament, plus the SACP and AZAPO, who are not represented in Parliament, but are significant players. So I've briefed virtually. We have also met with the executives of the vice-chancellors and the executives of the college principals,
So everyone has gotten the brief?
Everyone is in the loop.
But is everyone on the same page, though?
We are on the same page. No one has said, no, we are actually not going to be able to do this. Everyone has said, we are going to be working together to actually tackle these problems. Anyone who doesn't do this really will actually be breaking an arrangement and an agreement that we've made that we are going to be able to work together. Of course, in the meantime, we are working to improve our system. We really need very reliable data analytics. That's one of my priorities now, that I should be able to sit here, Karima, and say to you, look at the system. Who is receiving NFSAS where, and so on. The one challenge, that we agreed to with the students are UNISA students, for instance. We've said, we understand that much as UNISA was intended for working students, but what has been happening of late is that you get students who are not employed, who are actually studying virtually full-time at UNISA. So we have to discuss, I'm committed that we discuss that matter together with the students, and actually I want to look at how UNISA generally is functioning so that we are able to ensure as much as is possible as government that we are able to reach particularly poor students wherever they may be.
Minister, we're going to come to the state of TVET colleges, which I want to focus on because they are also tied to job opportunities and working experiences. You've placed one Seta under administration. But before I do that, let me ask you, where is the money going to come from for all of these plans? We are in a stagnant economy. In fact, our growth rates are dismal. Have you got assurances from Treasury that you have the money in hand and that we're not going to have problems down the line?
Well, NFSAS is money that has been allocated, so it's there. I'm least worried about that. What I'm worried about is money exactly that we do not have. For instance, there is a category of students called the missing middle. What I'm committing to do is that during the course of this year, I'm going to investigate and come up with a model with options of how we fund, students who are in the missing middle. We'll have to reach out to the private sector, because if truth be told, actually, what government is doing is subsidizing what ordinarily the private sector, the beneficiaries of these skills that we are training, should actually be contributing.
So let's talk about them, and let's talk about them in relation specifically to TVET colleges,
yes.
right? So historically, the API system worked in such a way that employers came on board, you were able to do your apprenticeship, go back to school, and there was a synergy between the workplace and the institution. How far are you down the line in terms of committing companies to actually take people from TVET colleges, give them work experiences, including, for example, the people who lecture at these institutions, so that the world of work is constantly informing the curriculum that is developed at TVET colleges?
That continues to be my priority. In fact, if not my priority number one, that, because we have to expand TVET colleges. We can't expand TVET colleges as glorified high schools. TVET colleges is a mix between theory and practice in the workplace. What I've done now from this year, I've appointed what I would call, for want of a better term, an industrial envoy. Someone from my office who is going to be based with the business organizations to actually work at a system.
Who is that person, Minister?
Of how. It's Mr. Ngaba Mandela that I've appointed to be my industrial envoy.
So he will be the link between?
Between my office and industry. That's how much I'm elevating this. Apart from what my two departments are doing, but at the level of my office politically, I want to have a direct, ongoing relationship with the business organizations in this country. That's one thing. The second thing, we are going to be announcing, I don't want to preempt this, and a very important deepening of a partnership with the Germans, especially in the wake of Chancellor Merkel's visit, this week, to actually discuss how we can cooperate with the Germans.
I'm very interested
to actually forge this relationship, because what is missing in TVET colleges is industry that is not close enough. But I must also quickly say this, by the way, it's not that we have not done anything. The college councils, the governing bodies of councils, we have actually been invited and have created space for industrial people to sit there, including in curriculum committees, so that what is taught and what is trained is actually relevant. But much more critically, we want placement of both students and lecturers, so that if you are a TVET college lecturer teaching motor mechanics, you must be able to go to BMW and Toyota.
That is exactly what I wanted to ask you, Minister. In Germany, that's precisely what happens, right? So are you envisaging, for example, an agreement with the German government that will involve potentially the training of TVET college lecturers to study in Germany, to look at the German model and replicate what has worked in that country and has formed essentially part of its industrial strategy?
We are already doing that. What we want to do is to escalate it. We already have a lot of our people who actually go to Germany, both students and lecturers. We have also established, by the way, 26 centers of specialization where we have actually targeting certain colleges to really become cutting-edge training, for instance, in boiler making or in welding or electricians and so on. And also partnering, with Germany and some of the South African companies, except that the challenge is that South African industry hasn't come forward in the manner that we would like them to come forward. That's why I am prioritizing this partnership, because ideally every TVET college student should be able to come out of college already having a job, or ready to be starting his or her own small operation.
Now, one of the big problems with that is, of course, the management of the Setas. Now, yesterday,
Yes.
You announced that you are placing the Construction, Education and Training Authority under administration, and you are quoted saying, given the challenges facing the Seta and after careful consideration, I've decided to place the Seta administration under administration to address all the concerns. Now, there's been a lot of corruption at these Setas.
Yes.
And there is a allegation that the monies that are meant to go for the upskilling of these students, for these work opportunities to be created, are actually being funneled to private individuals. What is the specifics in this instance, and what is going to be the consequence management, more importantly, for the Seta?
You mean in the construction
Yes.
Seta? In the construction Seta, by the way, the matter was discussed by Parliament. The Portfolio Committee said to this board, please step down. There's lots of problems. Some of you as board members are conflicted. Not all of them. In fact, some of those who may be jumping now and opposing the administration, you might find down the line, by the way, that they possibly have got some questions to answer. There is something that is burning them. And what I've done now, I said, I'm not going to bother to respond to them. I have appointed the administrator, and I've said to the administrator, stabilize the Seta and conduct a forensic investigation on both the things that have already been identified in relation to that Seta, as well as things that may not have been identified. Some of them, by the way, have been confidentially brought to my attention, and I am going to be asking the administrator to leave no stone unturned, including how does the Seta support its member organizations, you know, who are actually part of the construction Seta. Is it legitimate, or some are abusing that money and so on? And I'm very pleased also to say that I'll be meeting the Master Builders Association, who have requested a meeting with me. I have a lot of respect for them. They are very important constituents in the construction industry, because I want everybody to be satisfied that what I'm doing must be done transparently, so that we go to the bottom of the problems.
Minister, final question. When is the situation going to be brought to a head? What are the timelines? When can people expect that accountability to start kicking in?
I met with the administrator over this weekend, for instance, and I said one of the first things that we must do is to stop the leakages. Just identify them. Some of them, as I've said, have been shared confidentially with us. Just stop the leakages. Make sure that the Seta system functions. It must be paying stipends to learners. It must be paying money to employers, you know. But right away, within a month, I want you to have established a forensic
So we have a date in a month, Minister Nzimande. Thank you so
Yes.
very much. That was Minister Nzimande talking to us about the situation at tertiary institutions, but also at the Setas, the construction Seta having been placed under administration. Up next, what should top the list of President Cyril Ramaphosa when he addresses the State of the Nation? Stay with us.